So here's the thing, there have been a number of signings and smaller deals and all that stuff, and that's fine to talk about. We can make videos about all the extra signings and everything, but around this time we kind of start to ignore the bigger picture stories. Stories that are more feelings-based, rather than the straight-up stories of, oh, this team signed this guy, and this team grabbed that guy. Today we're talking about one of the top names of the NHL's free agency period that ended up not actually going to free agency at all. You already know from the title and the thumbnail, today we're talking about former Toronto Maple Leafs star and current Vegas Golden Knights top-paid player, Mitch Marner. And reports coming out of the Ottawa Citizen that the Ottawa Senators did not like the Marner deal to Vegas one bit. This was published by Garriock yesterday, later in the afternoon, and I was like, okay, that's a really interesting thought that I actually wanted to talk about. But as I had said, we made a whole bunch of videos yesterday about players signing and trades and all that stuff, so we didn't really have the time to dive into this particular Marner situation. But I wanted to read parts of this article and just dive into why, it seems, the Ottawa Senators are pissed off at Toronto. Let's dive into the scoop here. The article talks about how the Vegas Golden Knights had acquired Mitch Marner in a trade with the Maple Leafs, only hours before the NHL free agency market opened on Canada Day. The Leafs confirmed they had signed Marner to an 8-year, $96 million deal and then sent him to the Golden Knights in exchange for Nick Waugh. If you're wondering why Andlauer, the owner of the Ottawa Senators, has every right to be upset, look no further than why the deal happened in the first place. This doesn't pass the smell test. Talk surfaced in league circles on Saturday that the Leafs and Knights were going toe-to-toe over Marner, with Toronto GM Brad Treliving demanding something in return from the Knights, or the club could be the subject of a tampering complaint. Sportsnet's Elliot Friedman spoke about this on his 32 Thoughts podcast late Saturday night because Vegas had been chasing Marner for over a year. The talk in league circles was that one way or another, Marner was going to land with Vegas. Lo and behold, before the market opened, the Leafs were able to get the third-line center they needed so badly out of the Knights in exchange for Marner. The deal will pay Marner an average of $12 million a year. All that talk about any tampering complaints will be shoved under the rug, and everyone will live happily ever after. The NHL should immediately launch an investigation, but it won't. Instead, the trade was approved by the Central Registry. Now, this article, the way it opens up, doesn't talk too much about the specifics. It just says, okay, well, this is what happened. There was a threat of tampering. The trade was made. The contract was signed. And now Toronto is not going to push tampering. But you have to think, Garriock writes, Andlauer and Steve Staios, the club's president of hockey operations and GM, must be steaming over this deal between the Knights and the Leafs. The NHL's Board of Governors held its pre-draft meeting last Wednesday in LA, but that doesn't mean Commissioner Gary Bettman won't receive a call from Andlauer in the coming days. Teams were warned about fines for tampering and reminded that it won't be tolerated, especially with July 1st just around the corner. The NHL penalized the Senators a first-round draft choice in 24, 25, or 26 because of a botched deal with the Golden Knights for Dadonov. That was because former GM Pierre Dorion didn't supply the Knights with Dadonov's no-trade list. As a result of the punishment from the league that was levied on November 1st, Dorion was relieved of his duties by Andlauer. The Senators have opted not to forfeit the pick the last 2 years, which leaves Staios with no choice but to not have a selection in the first round in 2026. That will be fine if the Senators make the playoffs, but if they don't, it could be devastating. Under the terms of the fine, the Senators have no choice but to surrender their own pick. They can't acquire a second pick from someone else and use it to pay the piper. Now, the article dives into a lot of this stuff with Ottawa, specifically why Ottawa got into some hot water with Vegas a few years ago for Dadonov, but then it goes out there and says this. If Vegas isn't going to get called on the carpet for what took place in this deal with Marner, then the club never will. This is the team that has pushed the use of LTIR to its advantage to bring back players in the postseason when the salary cap doesn't matter. Sometimes it feels like there is one set of rules in the NHL for some teams, and others get treated with kid gloves. This is looking like one of those scenarios. Andlauer and Staios have to choose their words carefully because they are still holding out hope that Bettman sees fit to reduce the punishment. This latest Vegas Leafs trade should be held up as a big reason why Ottawa shouldn't have to rescind a first-round pick in 2026. Now, the reason there is importance to this piece being published by Garriock is because Garriock is like one of the main dudes when it comes to the Ottawa Senators' mindset being pushed out there into the media. The fact that he is writing this article and making these claims, oh yeah, you can bet that the Sens and Andlauer and Staios are pissed off that Marner was able to go to Vegas. The fact that he's saying that means it's probably true. They are probably pissed off. But I honestly, I have a difficult time fully relating the Vegas thing this year to the Evgeny Dadonov stuff from a few years ago, where Vegas tried to make a trade with Dadonov, but Dadonov had the no-trade list, and that wasn't supplied to the teams properly, and then Ottawa got a pick taken away from them because of it. I don't see how that is the same thing as this Marner situation. I don't necessarily know if they're saying it's the same thing, but I do think it's more of an example of, hey, why did Ottawa have to get this big penalty, but Vegas and Toronto, they're so obviously tampering, and they're arguing over this one guy, and inevitably there's a sign and trade, which makes Toronto not want to do the tampering charge anymore, even though it kind of is tampering. Why are they allowed to get away with that, but we are punished so harshly for not supplying the no-trade list properly? Why are they allowed to get that special treatment? And I think it all depends on your judgment of the magnitude of the crime. Not even crime, but the offense here. The fact that Pierre Dorion didn't provide the proper no-trade list for Dadonov is in and of itself a bad thing. But if there are two teams going out there and arguing and trying to one-up each other in terms of a player, yeah, okay, tampering could be on the table, and Toronto threatened it. You could say it was very well tampering. But is it that bad? That's the question. I don't know, maybe the NHL is in a spot where even Elliot Friedman was saying the other day that they want to make an example out of somebody. They want to really lay the hammer on the line on one of their teams. They don't want to let teams walk around the league. In Vegas, the fact that Garriock is even writing about in the article, yeah, this is the team that always does the LTIR hack. This is the team that's always getting in there. They're always playing against the rules and they're always getting away with it, etc., etc. There's a very genuine sort of anger that you can say this article has in its subtext. And from that, I'm really starting to get the vibe that, hey, maybe the Sens are pissed off. Maybe they're super upset that the Vegas Golden Knights were able to get away with this Marner-Toronto negotiation, and they're salty that they still have to forfeit their own first-round pick. Especially in a draft year like this one, where it's really, really strong. If they go out there and they suck, they're so bad, they could be missing out on a super talented player in this year's draft because that draft pick is rescinded. Of course they want it back. Which is why the article says at the bottom, yeah, that's why they're not going to complain to the NHL right away, because they don't want to piss off the NHL even more and be like, hey, you guys are complaining too much. Your first-round pick is totally gone. We're not going to give it back to you. Hell no. You guys are giving us more problems. This is totally a bizarre situation, and I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about the Ottawa Senators being pissed off as all heck about the Vegas Golden Knights Mitch Marner signing and how they want to speak out about it? Article's going to be linked in the description, but for now, let me know in the comment section how do you feel about all of this. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.